So it's a funny story how this even happened. So like 2 years ago, I got the new Get Dead record, and I did I was really early on to TikTok. I still don't know if I do it very well per se, but I do enjoy making content on the platform. But I've been doing YouTube for a while, and I was making these daily videos of just showcasing a record. And I was like, yo, this is an underrated band in punk rock. Y'all need to really get on this, man. And I had their latest album on, and I was spinning it. It was just a little quick 60-second clip. And then so a year after that, somebody I guess saw the little clip, and they were like, oh man, I love Sam's voice. And I was like, man, me too. I'd love to get Homeboy on a podcast one day. And then a year after that, I posted a Pat the Bunny video a few months ago. And this girl's she's like, oh, I love this dude's music. And I was like, yeah. And it's so strange because it's all these little things collided. And I was like, what? And she goes, you ever heard this dude Ceschi? And I was like, yeah, I know that guy. And I was like, why? I had no idea you even knew him. And then she's like, oh man, he might be down to talk about some punk rock shit on your show. And I was like, oh, word. And then I found out it was the same dude in Co-defendants, same dude in Get That. Dude, blew my mind, man. It was such a weird little. Yeah, it was pretty cool, man. It was pretty cool. This is my favorite thing in the world to do. So,
yeah, that's cool. That's cool. That's a connection that not everybody makes.
Dude, wild, man. Blew my mind. Man, that guy's an interesting character, man. How did you get to meet him?
Pat the Bunny or Sam?
Yeah. No, Pat.
Oh, Pat? Dang, I met Pat. Pat was probably 17 years old when I met. It was probably 2006, I want to say. We played.
Okay.
It was at a time when Pat used to go by the name James. And my boy Pepe, who's since both of them have become very close friends of mine now. But back in the day, Pepe ran a little label called DIY Bandits. And he discovered Pat playing on a stoop somewhere in Hartford, Connecticut, and he decided he should book a show with me, who was doing way out there psychedelic hip hop folk stuff, and Pat. And I think that was recommended by somebody else. Our friend MC Homeless might have recommended me to do it, and we played a warehouse show in Bridgeport before anyone knew what we did. And I remember, nobody knew Pat at the time, and he was a teenager, and his little brother Michael was also there. They were just stinky kids going around with acoustic guitars and CDRs, and I remember they kind of reminded me of me and my little brother, as me and my little brother always kind of went around everywhere and did music for a long time. And my brother wasn't at that show in particular, but I remember buying their or maybe trading CDs with them and really digging what Johnny Hobo and Michael Jordan Touchdown Pass, which is his brother's project. And since then we started playing other shows together. About a year later, the next time I played with Johnny Hobo and the Freight Trains, it was hundreds of crusty kids that
That's
showed
so
up.
dope, bro.
Word of mouth. It was just pure word of mouth, and it was really, it was just really amazing to see that. And that day, I remember saying to Pepe, "I will never play after Pat ever again in my life."
Dude, that kid, man,
it became a whole cult at some point. And on a smaller level, it did for me too, So we ended up connecting many years later. Pat became Wingnut Dishwashers Union, then started Ramshackle Glory. When Ramshackle Glory was formed, I was the one to actually. It's a little known fact. I did the graphic design layout for Wingnut Dishwashers Union. They didn't have anyone to do it, so I threw it together. Because Pepe was like, "Hey man, you know how to use Photoshop or whatever it was?"
Nice.
And so I didn't do the drawing, but I put the layout out quickly for them. And
Dude, I
when
actually
Ramshackle
have that
Glory,
vinyl.
yeah, when Ramshackle Glory, which was Pat's third project, came out, when he came out of rehab in Arizona and did that, I distributed that project. Like it was the first Pat project to be like, distributed to stores and stuff like that.
Dude, that's awesome.
So it was always like a part. I was always kind of in the background, but through that, and I've always supported and followed what Pat was doing. Then after that, Pepe was like, it was a dream of mine to link y'all two to make a split, and so we took the time to make this split record together and toured together on multiple tours, and they were that ended up being Pat's last tours. He didn't
Wow.
he stopped he stopped putting out music and touring, and he just kind of went down a different path in life. And we're still good friends, and we still stay in touch. And yeah,
Dude, what an
that's
awesome story, man. That's amazing. And I didn't mean to interrupt earlier. I thought you were finished with your thought. So yeah, I actually found that I have that record. I had no idea that it was like sought after. I just like it. And so I've had it for a long time. And
you have the split?
no, I have the Wingnut is what I was when I interrupted you a minute ago.
Oh, yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
I had the Wingnut. I've only heard the split once, man. Is there physical copies of that like just out there? Do they exist?
It's a very sought, unfortunately, maybe too sought after.
Yeah,
It's like
I've
point where it's so expensive, it's hard to.
yeah, I've fallen into that pit a few times. Yeah, it's vinyl collecting can be a pain. It's physical media collecting. So I also own and operate a small independent label. We've only done one release thus far, but I've got two more planned. And I've done it before in the past. I put out 2 records in my early 20s, and so I'm kind of familiar with the process. But yeah, it's a thing, man. These people that collect stuff, they go rabid for it, and it's kind of hard to figure out how to do it too. Because if you put too much of your money into a project, you end up just eating it real bad. You can't. It's just hard to exist like that. So it's kind of another double-edged sword, you know.
I ran a label for 15 years, so
Yeah,
I still do.
You know how
So,
that shit works, then, man. Like
man,
that's
it could be really brutal at times. It could be, you take chances, and sometimes it really works out. But even when it really works out, you're not really profiting much. It's just keeping things going. And then sometimes when it
yeah.
really doesn't work out, it's just like burning money.
Yeah, no, it
So,
absolutely is. And
and there's a
you're
lot
right
of
though.
months when it becomes that way, when it's just keeping it going is just burning
Mhm.
money. Especially when
Absolutely.
you get to a point where it kind of grows a little bit, and you have to maintain a certain standard. You get employees, whatever it might be. It starts, yeah, the expenses add up, and yeah, it's a difficult thing. I know Pepe from the DIY Bandits. I should shout him out because he was in federal prison for a while, and
Hmm.
now he's back out, and he's starting, instead of going hard on a label again, he's starting a coffee subscription thing when he's going to do. Man, it's beautifully designed. It's called Bandits Coffee, and it's they're gonna announce
Nice.
that, I guess, September, and they're gonna have songs from all of us, like um, a lot of, like, I know Apes the State, and
Okay.
myself and Pat, and probably Days and Days as well. So
Those are
yeah,
the
like,
homies down here from Houston, man. I just had Jesse on a
yeah,
couple of weeks ago. Yeah.
yeah. I figured Jesse. I figured you'd know Whitney and Jesse.
Yes, I
Um,
do.
cool.
That's awesome, dude.
So
It's a small world, man. This is a very like it's been proven time and time again. You could be. I've never met you, but we know so
yeah,
many of the same people. It's you know what I'm saying. Like it's what one of the most important parts of punk rock and punk adjacent culture is to me is that we could all. I could just know he's a solid dude because my guy told me he was, so I can count on him. And when we were younger, we all did stupid stuff, but like especially as you get older, I'm the same age as you. We're about the same age, man. So like I feel like we probably hit the same wavelengths a lot in our lives and just had been part of the same crews, not even known it.
Yeah.
Wild.
Yeah, it's been it's funny now that Codefendants is, ever since coming out with Codefendants, the amount of connections. The other day, a fool that I knew from the weed game, from back when, he was like, "Yo, who's that cat that you rap with on Fast Ones?" He had heard Fast Ones that we did with the DOC. He's
Okay.
like, and
Yeah.
he's asking about Sam. He's asking me about
Oh,
Sam, and
nice.
I was like, yeah, he's a singer of Get Dead, and he used to rap. He's like, yeah. I mean, I know him as a rapper. He used to rap, and he's like, that fool's tape in the late '90s was the first thing, my first underground tape, and that's the reason I rap, because he was like in
What?
this underground rap group in the late '90s, and he mentioned Sam's crew member from back then. Yeah, they did a bunch of freestyle kind of stuff in the Bay Area, and man, I don't want to like say names and like mess it up.
No, for sure.
But it was enough
That's
that I recognized it. And I was like, "What? Yeah, that's Sam."
dude. It's this stuff happens all the time. Okay, so man, I don't. You know what? I will reserve the. I'll tell you this thing at the very end, so I can just cut it right off because I don't need to put people's, like you said, just certain things need to not be talked about. But there's a situation I'm going to tell you about. It's a little quick story. It's going to blow your mind because it blew my mind so much that when it happened, I was literally washing. I bartend part time to kind of keep money coming in cash. I dropped a glass that when it happened, I was like, "What?" And I dropped because it was a person that blew my mind. But dude, I definitely wanted to talk to you guys, specifically you actually, about co-defendant stuff. Man, I gave it a few spins when it first dropped on Spotify, and I kind of let it simmer, and I really enjoyed it. And I couldn't figure out what it was that I was feeling, what it was reminding me of. And the only other band that I could come close to saying that it would be in a similar sound of would be like the Transplants kind of stuff, but not really even that, because even that band is so different. Man,
Yeah, I never heard them. So when
really?
when that happened, and I think purpose, like, there was a moment when we were making the record when Sam mentioned, "Oh, people are gonna think it's like the Transplant." I was like,
Oh,
I
really?
never listened to it. I never listened
That's
to it. It was a couple moments when well, I think it was when we made Bad Business and Sam made a drum and bass beat, and for that, and that was the moment he's like, "Oh, people are gonna say that shit about this." I was like, "I never heard him." After our record was done, he played me their first album. I was like, "Oh, okay, this is pretty dope."
dude, that's
I
some
literally
OG
heard that
stuff.
album. I heard that shit once, but then I was in a club in Europe. I was in England, and I recognized a song. I think I heard it on a commercial or something, and I was like, "I recognize that joint." And someone was like, "Oh, that's Transplants." I was like, "Oh, I recognize that song."
It was probably that one on
From
that L'Oreal commercial. It was like dun 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 dun. Like
yeah, it's kind
that
of
was a
like
terrible.
it was like an upbeat kind of like
Yeah,
yeah, it's like a
Diamonds and Guns. It was like a piano driven like situation. Uh,
yeah, but
yeah, and
I wasn't very familiar with them at all. So it was funny for me to hear people like, "Oh, they're trying to do this." I was like, "Man,
nah, man.
I've
I
never heard of that
still
band."
I still think that they're very, very, very different. I just couldn't come up with something else that I thought, because of Transplants is the only group that sounds like them. Co-defendants are the only group that sounds like y'all. Like I don't know anything
Yeah.
else that sounds like that. I really think it's cool. I mean, I'm glad you guys have the courage to blend the genres so seamlessly and take some risks. Because I mean, yeah, it's a good group of people to be in, man. But punk rockers can be stupid. Like, let's
Oh
be
yeah, yeah. It
honest
could be
about it.
snobby. It could be snobby about some
Yeah.
shit. But I
So I
mean,
mean,
we are punk rockers. Like as we say on on Fast Ones, we were born into it. You know what I mean? So
facts.
as of right now, my big cousin is drumming for Cro-Mags. You know what I mean? So like
Nice.
that's the kind of history I come from. Like those are cousins of mine that are 10 years older than me.
That's
I
amazing.
was born into punk, whether I liked it or not, and I was born into rap because of the neighborhoods I grew up in. Same with Sam.
Facts.
So
Yep.
I was rapping 8 years old, and it was just because of where I grew up. Because I grew up in Berkeley and on the border of Oakland, in California. It's just something we did.
I mean,
And
that's like
the neighborhood I
almost the
was in,
birthplace.
it was definitely a big moment for it. And at the time, I mean, Hammer was like the mayor of Oakland, so we I
Dude,
feel like
please
Hammer
don't hurt him.
employed the entire city at that time, and people love to forget that history of hip hop, but that's when hip hop really went crazy pop.
Well,
You
yeah,
know what I
dude, I
mean?
mean, between him and Vanilla Ice, people want to say what they want to say, but every time those songs come on, we get around and start dancing around. We all bob our head because they're super catchy and
Yeah,
memorable. But they really did like
yeah. When I'm
explode the genre.
8 years old, that was the shit. And so, yeah. So I didn't think about it. It was just something that happened. We listened. I it was just a thing that I grew up with. It wasn't something we thought too hard about. And I never really stopped. I mean, there was moments when I definitely got more into um, underground rock shit than underground hip hop shit, but it was always kind of blended together. And once I got really deep into hardcore, it was always a bit of the culture of hardcore was to be a hip hop head. Also, graffiti was
Yep.
massive. And when I moved to the East Coast, every hardcore kid you knew was a graffiti writer and looked like they were fucking rapping if they weren't actually rapping. When I first saw the rapper Sage Francis, I was at a hardcore show. It was
Let's go.
1996. It was one of his first concerts of all time, and it was in New Haven, Connecticut. I was just a 15-year-old kid. Um, yeah, it was a 95 or 96. Yeah, it was early, and he was just making tapes and rapping with a hardcore band.
That's
And
awesome.
we were there to see a group called Vision of Disorder.
I know.
So it was
Yeah. I know
yeah, so
VOD.
yeah. So that was kind of the shit I grew up on. And it wasn't something I thought about much. I happened to be more embraced by the underground hip hop world with the music I made. And I kind of fell more into that. While Sam, in the end, even though he came up out of the same shit, he happened to be more embraced by this sect of punk rock, like Fat Wreck and all that. So it's just, and then we just connected, but we came from the same shit. What we didn't think about it all that much.
Most of us didn't. Based on our ages, I heard Sam once say on an interview a while back that that we were from the 90s, and in the 90s we just liked whatever was dope, and it didn't necessarily mean like I was a punk rock kid, but I sure as hell had a Beck tape. I had Bone Thugs and
Hmm.
Harmony. I had UGK. I had whatever was just dope. I didn't really
Yeah,
care
yeah,
for a few bands, but there was only a few of them I didn't like. And as I got older, I got into my own stuff. But that stays with you, man. That's bred into your innermost being, and when you start to make your own music, you'll start to have uh things pop up that you weren't expecting necessarily. And I mean, you
yeah.
said Connecticut.
Sam fucked with Beck heavy. I don't know if he mentioned that.
Really? I
Like
didn't know that.
Sam fucked with Beck heavy when he was like 14,
That's
15.
dope.
And he was the one to show me some of that shit. In fact, recently we had a drive out to the desert. Like we drove like 2 hours out of Vegas earlier this year, and we just bumped Beck the whole time, like some of those
That's
early
so fire.
records. Yeah, and I had a few friends that were really into Beck, but I never went down that rabbit hole too hard. Some of that shit is really interesting,
Very
experimental.
avant-garde. Very, very
Yeah,
strange, for lack of a better word. No disrespect
yeah.
meant, of course.
In the
Beck did.
90s, that was that could be on a major label.
That's what it was. The 90s had, dude, the 90s is the weirdest decade of music I can recall off the top of my head. Uh, I got one
Yeah.
very simple question. You mentioned Connecticut a lot. Is that where you're from? Is Connecticut?
Well, I moved to New Haven when I was 14. So I was in the Bay Area until then.
Okay.
My parents got divorced. My father stayed in Oakland, and my mother's from New Haven, Connecticut
Oh,
originally.
okay.
So she moved us back there with my grandparents when I was 14. So,
It's like a
um,
little onion, man. There's so many layers to all this stuff. Like the
yeah,
reason I asked is because I saw. Did you have a release on Stillborn? And if you did, was it the same Stillborn by Jamie?
yeah, Jamie's. Yep.
Dude, what a
Um,
strange world this is, man. Like, I love this kind of stuff. This makes my day, man. Thank you for talking to me, bro. This is awesome,
yeah,
man.
my big cousin, who I mentioned, who's now who's currently touring with Chromax right now in Europe. He's boys with Jamie from way back, and he's like worked with. We started a group called Dead by Wednesday in the mid 2000s, like 2005, I want to say. And sorry, I'm getting texts right now, like it's so fucking annoying. But yeah, 2005. He was in bands like metal band, like mostly thrash metal bands and stuff like
Okay.
that, out of Connecticut for many years. His name is Shout Opus. My big cousin Opus. He uh
Dude.
he started as a punk drummer. His brother was involved in the punk scene and hardcore scene, whatever. And and then my cousin Opus joined a group called Gargantua Soul. Eventually, that kind of, for Connecticut, it got big, and became one of the biggest bands out of Connecticut in history. Like they had they were managed by the same manager as Rage Against the Machine,
Oh,
and
wow.
they did stadiums with Rage and like at the Drive-In and Gangstar and on that tour. And
Oh,
they did
that's crazy.
They did Woodstock 90. They basically did Woodstock 99. They were on like TV a bunch.
Huh.
They were like going really high, and then they broke up. So when he was kind of on the low of that, kind of when that was falling apart, he brought me and my brother in, and just a 4-track cassette player, and he had some little demos, thrash metal kind of demos, and he asked us to do our little super fast raps on them. And that
Dude,
was
that's
his
awesome.
concept. And
Dude,
that became
that's
Dead by
rad.
Wednesday. And Dead by Wednesday is still a band today. We're just not actively in it. I'll still be on almost all of their albums doing guest vocals though.
That's pretty
So,
awesome.
but Jamie Josta and Jay Reason were the first people to put it out. So shout out
Yeah,
to those guys.
I saw that and I was just like, what? Because I mean, I don't know him like well. I've met him a couple of times, but I have friends that do know him well. Like, and it's
Yeah.
just such a small world, man. I know I've said that twice now, but it's mind blowing the amount of different layers that we could still peel back, and it's still going to be the exact same thing. Everything from like the punk rock stuff, the hip hop stuff, the hardcore. Because hardcore, punk rock, and hip
Mm.
hop are all very closely intertwined, man.
Yeah, I mean, when I started uh, recording, the first person to ever record me was a dude named Mike Z, who they also call Mikey Yeff, who's the guitarist of 100 Demons.
Oh
So
wow.
like that's the first dude to ever record me and my homies when we were like 14, 15 years old. So
I was just playing this dude through the eyes of the Lord at my store. I have a little shop that's open on the weekends, and he was like, "You got any hardcore?" And I was like, "You like some beatdown shit?" And he's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Here, check this out." And he was like,
yeah,
"What is this?" I was like, "Bro, this is 100 Demons, man. This is some shit you need to get into." But
dude, and I went
dude, that's
and
so
our real
wild.
good homie did the art on that, and yeah, like Lou Jacques. I mean, it's a small Connecticut's a small state
Yeah.
with a hardcore scene like expanded worldwide, and we see it everywhere now.
Well,
And
dude, it blew up
it's
with
pretty cool.
Hatebreed.
Oh yeah, Hatebreed was on
Like,
another level.
yeah, it went
I
like, I mean,
remember
but that guy.
I remember the earliest days of Hatebreed. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah,
awesome.
like just we would live at this little club called the Tune In. That's where we went every weekend, and it was also, it was funny. At these Punk and Drublic shows we've been doing, I connected with Jr. of Less Than Jake, and
Let's go.
he had he's from Connecticut. He never left Connecticut, and he knew everyone that we're talking about and grew up in that whole scene as well. We had tons of mutual friends, and so that was cool too.
That's
So
awesome.
it's another. I didn't realize there was any Less Than Jake connection to that New Haven
I didn't
music
either. I
scene,
thought they were a Florida band. I thought that everybody was from Florida. Uh,
because
I'm actually,
I've met other members, and they're all from like Gainesville and stuff like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm doing a little short expose video on Gainesville, no idea record stuff, and I was just thinking about Less Than Jake last night, and that's so strange, man. I freaking love this community, dude. So how do you and Sam link up? Because I thought that y'all had been friends from like way back, but I read somewhere, maybe it was wrong, that y'all barely know each other. What, a year, couple of years, maybe?
Yeah, now a few years now, but it's been that really happened. So he saw me in 2018 at the Gilman at 924 Gilman Street, and
Okay.
I remember that show very I remember that show very well for multiple reasons, personal reasons. I don't like need to get all into at the time, but
Sure.
I was there. I happened to be there with my brother and my boy Max, who's my bandmate, child actor, shout out child actor, who's also esteemed hip hop producer as well. And we
Nice.
happened to do this trio kind of set that we never have brought out to the West Coast. It was a very rare set. Sam was at that show. I met him, but I didn't really like get to know him or anything. He has some of his closest friends he grew up with were big followers of my music. Like
Nice.
they they um they would go to every show I had in town. They would, whether anywhere that was near the Bay Area, whether it was Berkeley, San Francisco, Oakland, they'd be at every show I played. And when I was locked up in 2013,
Okay.
2013, I believe it was 2013. So yeah, 10 years ago. Um, when I was locked up, his boys who were tattoo artists were like doing flash sheets to to help me out in my record label. I was trying to keep my record label going during the time I was locked up, which was a big
Okay.
concern of mine. So I did a Indiegogo campaign just for people to keep things going on the outside while I was in there. And his boys really stepped up and helped out, and like out of their own kindness, were doing tattoos that were all inspired by our music and our record label. And
Nice.
so I didn't really put two and two together till way later. And and but yeah, those are all like Sam's homies he grew up with. So in 2020, Dancer with the Curse came out,
Yeah.
and he shouted me out on a podcast as like an influence or something. He was bumping it, he was into.
That's
And
awesome.
so other fans of both of our music reached out to me, and they said, this singer Get Dead's like shouting you out. They made this really incredible punk record. And it was just right when Dancing with the Curse came out. I checked it out, and I loved it. It was so nostalgic for me. It was like fresh for me. It was like 2020, I was feeling so hyper nostalgic during that whole lockdown period and that
Dude,
whole
lockdown was
time.
killing everybody.
So that record, it just like brought me back to being a kid in Berkeley again, like and the first punk rock I listened to, and a lot of that, like had like it was like a modern Op Ivy for me in some ways, and
Mm.
it was just like something I loved very much. So I got deeply into it. That was my favorite record of that year. And we also just started chopping it up on Instagram or internet, and then started talking to each other on the phone all the time because we were kind of bored, like we just kind of got to
Yeah.
know each
Yeah.
other. And during that time, he would send me he was fucking around on MPC, and he was making riffs on the guitar, and he just sent it to me um to check out. I got a live stream thing that we did for my label, and I remember at one point he's just like, "Yo, come out to LA, and we'll record this demo," which became Abscessed. He
Okay.
was painting Fat Mike's house at the time, and yeah, because he's a professional painter.
I actually
He
knew
was a
that. That's why
painter
I was
for
laughing.
years and years.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he was painting Fat Mike's house with a couple homies. So that's a big old house. So he he was there just kind of living there in the pool house, and painting it. And he's like, yeah, come out here, we'll record. And I finally broke out of Connecticut. It was February 2021. I went to Puerto Rico to see my family out there, and flew straight from Puerto Rico to LA. I recorded with Sam like the first week of March 2021, and the first session we had, we did Abscessed. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
I mean, that's like that sounds like it was pretty organic, man. That tells me right there, that's why the music's so good, because there was nothing forced in it. It was just like, hey, let's kick it, let's do some music. All right, cool. That's when the best stuff happens. I mean,
yeah,
I've had a couple of projects that I've done, and the stuff I like the most is all the stuff that was just me and my friends hanging out, just chilling, and then it was like, oh, all of a sudden we're playing shows. Like that's a lot of fun, man.
I think for both of us, we had been, limited for all those years of pandemic already, and Sam had just come had a divorce, and he just had a lot. We both had a lot to say. We just kind of exploded with creativity, and we wrote a bunch of songs in the first couple months. We probably wrote half of what the album is. By the time Mike heard it, he probably heard 3 songs. And he was like, I want in. What is it going to take to be a part of this? And, it started as him kind of producing the album, and, it being part of this new label idea that he had, Bottles to the Ground.
Yeah.
But eventually we were like, you're so involved with this, just join the band, man. You're part of this band. So that's how that kind of went down.
I was kind of
were hanging out a lot.
To be in the band. That makes sense though. If you're around it all the time and you're contributing a lot, it's just like
it was like beyond producing. We lived together. Like
okay.
We all Sam and I just kind of moved into that pool house in the back.
Nice. That's awesome.
And we lived at Fat Mike's. Like we made tons of music there, tons of music that maybe no one will ever hear. A lot of this stuff is coming out, kind of trickling out on these 10 inches that we're doing and stuff like that. But yeah, a lot of it won't make the records.
Records. I think that sometimes you make the music for you and your close knit group of friends. It's not necessarily meant for everybody else, because I mean, shoot, some of the conversations that you're having in the song, they may not be for everybody else to hear, man. It might just be something for you and your people to hear. Nothing wrong with that.
Or Michael maybe shuts something down early, where even if Sam and I really mess with it, he's like, if that's not right for this project, then we kind of like roll with his opinion on that. So I don't know.
He's got quite a bit of knowledge.
Yeah, we trust his opinion on that. Like, he's the producer, really, when it comes down to it. And we all have to agree, if there's something that he likes and we don't like, we're not going to allow that to be on the record.
For sure.
But yeah, in the end, if there's something that he doesn't feel is right for Codefendants, I mean, maybe it'll come out some other way. Who knows?
Yeah.
We've thought about.
You can do an endless number of projects. You don't have to do it under that title of Codefendants. You can do it however you want to do it. I mean,
yeah.
If you listen to between the two of you and Sam, you have a very, very diverse group of sounds. I mean, Get Dead sounded like folk punk, even though it's not really folk punk. It sounded, kind of like that. It's got a lot of the plugged-in stuff, had a little bit of the ska stuff, a little bit of the hip-hop stuff. That bled into Codefendants. Codefendants has a little bit of the acoustic stuff, a little bit of hip-hop. It's awesome, man. That's why.
So does all of my music.
I
have acoustic stuff on all of my albums too, and I have entire albums that are acoustic, multiple albums. So,
have you ever been told that you kind of sound like Frank Turner when you sing?
When I first played for Fat Mike, he was like, "Man, you should be opening for Frank Turner, or you should be playing with Frank Turner, or whatever."
Wow, really?
That's awesome. I mean, I've never thought about it too much. We might have some of the same influences. But yeah, we're about to play a show with him next month, so that's gonna be cool.
Yeah, it was more like your vocals sounded like, it's just the way you sang. I just thought, oh man, this is good. It sounds like somebody I can't put my finger on it. And then like the next day, I'm like getting in my car and I had my phone, I have my headphones in and I'm listening to stuff on Spotify. And when the songs came on, and I went, "That's who it is." It sounds kind because when I heard it, I thought, "Oh, is this a Frank Turner song?" And I looked at it, I was like, "No, it's Ceschi." And I was pretty surprised by that, to be honest with you. But when you guys are sitting down to write music, do you have a particular process that you go through, or do you just kind of, hey, I got some ideas, because that's what a lot of bands do, I guess. But there's all kinds of different ways to come up with music. What do you guys tend to do?
Every song is kind of built differently. Some songs are built from a beat, like MPC beat that Sam will come up with, or I would say half the album that came out, I probably started it on guitar. You know what I mean? Or Sam and I like some of them are super collaborative like that. Like Sam came with the first chords on Suicide by Pigs, but
okay, it's a great song.
Then I kind of flipped him and did the second verse, and we wrote that like bar for bar together. So but yeah, the first four chords, that whole intro, Sam wrote that on guitar, and then I kind of took it and like elaborated on that for the rest of that.
Okay, so it's more of a collaborative effort than maybe you just bringing a song to the table then and going, "Hey, I wrote a complete song."
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that rarely happens here. Or something
that explains a lot.
Something like "Sell Me Youth" was an interesting one because that was an old acoustic demo I had. Actually, I remember showing that. I wanted to do at one point I was going to do a split with Whitney from Days and Days, and it didn't work out because of tragic things and whatever. But
okay,
much love to Whitney, but it was like a sad situation.
Okay.
So but I had the original demo of "Sell Me Youth" and some of the early lyrics for that on acoustic, and I remember bringing it into the studio and we ended up making like 4 different genre versions of that until we decided on doing something that was kind of inspired by the screamers out of Los Angeles, like synth punk. So
I love
that was
synth punk stuff.
So like Mike was like, man, Mike and Sam are really into screamers, and it got me really into screamers too. But they we were watching their video, their like live performance video on YouTube over and over again.
Okay.
And we tried to mimic the sound of screamers. We ended up going with a bit more modern sound. Originally, we found the exact same keyboards screamers used, the exact same.
I'm writing that name down
old
because I'm not
synths.
familiar with them.
Yeah, they never put out an album, I don't believe. It was just live performance art, kind of like synth punk. It's a big influence on like Nate No Face as well.
Okay. So, I really like synth-led punk rock stuff. I really like. There's this dude Johnny Notebook that puts out all kinds of weird crap. I love that guy's music.
Cool.
But punk rock is so kind of genre fluid, if you'd like to use that terminology.
Oh yeah.
Dude, there's all kinds of punk rock.
Since the beginning of punk rock, there was always reggae in punk rock too.
Hell yeah.
So close, and there's so much dub influence in punk rock. So that's kind of we have a bit of that with Defcons, right? Like when we do Defcons, we purposely had like bucket drums and dubbed it out, and the bass line is like a dub bass line that Mike is very proud of. That's one of his favorite bass lines. But yeah, I mean, we have a lot of nods to different stuff, but we weren't thinking about it all that hard. We just didn't want anything on the record that sounded like the next. We just really didn't want 2 songs that sounded too alike.
So. Right. Well, if you think about it too hard, it'll become obvious. People will be able to tell that you're trying too hard to do something. If it comes natural to you, it's likely going to sound better just forever. You want a timeless song. You want a song that sounds good now, and then if you play it again in 17 years, it still sounds really good. To bring up the Transplants again, I recently dove back into their catalog, maybe about a year ago, and I was surprised at how well it was holding up to me. I was really enjoying their songs still, and my favorite band is Rancid. So anything that Tim's a part of, I'm always interested in, and I thought it was kind of cool when I think it was their second album came out. Like Paul Wall did a chopped and screwed version, and it like not in their first one, it completely blew my mind because it's like another instance of punk and hip hop crossing paths and linking up. It was pretty interesting, man. What
actually kind of like who I knew from that crew. Well, I really met him more through Jamie and the Hatebreed dudes was Danny Diablo.
Let's go.
Well,
Come on, Danny Diablo.
In our old day, in the Dead by Wednesday days, he was around a lot. I'm pretty sure he lived in Connecticut at that time and like worked for Stillborn. I'm pretty sure. So that's how I kind of and I knew he was involved with Transplants on some level.
Yeah, he did some vocals. I don't know what all his involvement was, but I know he did some vocals on some of their stuff.
Yeah,
dude. It's funny, man. Everything we're talking
about. He's a funny
crazy
fool. Yeah, he's a funny dude.
Yeah. So what do you guys like to do when you're just kicking it, man? I've never been out of Texas before, and I'm leaving to go to Vegas with my wife for the first time. Hopefully,
next couple months. You gonna check out the museum?
That's exactly why I'm going, man. I cannot wait to go do that. Like literally, we're planning
a tour.
Whole trip.
Are you doing one of the
whatever I can do? We're planning 2 full days to be like for us to go and just be in and around that. I want to vlog it all if they let me. I don't know what the rules are there, but I want to vlog the whole thing.
About that.
That's what I thought, because I do this kind of content stuff pretty much full time now. So I just whenever I heard Mike talking about it,
tours are legendary. Like I saw Smelly is doing another series of tours there, and he would be so great. He's such a great storyteller and such a good dude. So I think that would be legendary to get taken around. Because I feel if there's one thing I could say about the Punk Rock Museum, it's not meant for newbies. It's not meant for like a kid that needs to learn what punk rock is. It's meant for people like us who are like, oh, what? It doesn't explain much. It's just like this shit's here. This exists here. They have this like.
That's kind of what I was hoping to go and just kind of bathe in all the freaking disgusting punk rock glory and just man. I mean, I'm gonna light up when I go in there, bro. I can't. Like, I've been into this stuff for almost 30 years, man. I can't wait.
Yeah. So for you, it's made for you. It's made for punks. It's not. It's more like a church of punk, introducing people to punk and writing big explanations and having it is not like that. It's just like a church, a temple of it, where these artifacts exist and these people are there and giving tours and are part of it and they're part owners of it, and it's kind of like
that's what it felt like. It felt like it was part mine when he was building it. I was watching I was watching all of it on YouTube, and I was thinking like, man, this is incredible. Like, this dude built something that I've dreamt of, and he didn't even know that I dreamt of it, which I would imagine there's probably a million of us out there now that could say that exact sentence. I feel like that's part mine. I've bled for this, and I've put time and money and heart. And I mean, people that, and everything I've done is on a smaller scale compared to the stuff that you were doing and stuff, but anybody's done any of this stuff, any label stuff, flyers, putting on shows, being a part of the shows, attending the shows, you have a right to go there and look at this stuff and
that's all represented. But they have a whole, just because I've seen a lot of the behind the scenes, they have a whole nother museum's worth of artifacts that they'll be able to switch in and out, and it's amazing stuff. And if you're nerdy about it like us and have lived it us, it's it's an amazing thing to bask in and just kick it. And it's like a great place to just kick it. And you can just sit in that guitar room and play everyone's instruments.
That's so crazy to me. Man. I can't wait to just get a little bit of footage of me doing a little bit of that, man.
It doesn't feel too holy or anything, you know what I mean? You know how like in a museum everything is like holy and behind glass.
It's
not a lot. There's not a lot of that. There's stuff it's beautifully presented, it's elegant, but it's definitely a punk rock museum. It's not.
Well, that's the impression that I got when I was watching the stuff with him talking about it, and he was so excited about it that I was like, bro, I can't wait for this. And when my wife and I we got some we got a little bit of money recently, sold some land, and we got this place where we're staying now. And I've dropped out of high school and I got face tattoos and shit, so I was never supposed to have this. This was never meant for me. I just was too stubborn to go away, and like. So we were talking, and she's like, "You've never been anywhere. Where do you want to go?" And it was right about the time that he was talking about this place, and I was like, "Well, look, I know it's not necessarily your cup of tea all the way like it is mine. There's this place that this dude's building in Las Vegas," and I showed her a video. She got excited too because she's how excited I was, and she was like, "Hell yeah, I want to go see that." And she's like, "It's freaking Vegas. There's tons of stuff to do outside of that." And I was like, "You know what?
Yeah.
So
yeah, you'll be able to go to like 5-star restaurants and Michelin star restaurants, and
that's crazy.
And check it. There's like everything within like 3 miles. You know what I mean?
That's so dope.
So it's just there's a lot to do in Vegas. It's kind of endless. It's not just the Strip, for sure. You could completely be off the Strip and have the best time.
I've heard that.
Doing downtown.
Again, I have no experience, but I've heard that it's not just the Strip's the only place you can go. I'll have.
Actually, I don't even. There's not that much on the Strip aside from. I think you should check out some shows if you have a chance. We got to do a bit of the Vegas life out there, thanks to some good friends who kind of treated us. But it's
That's
fun.
awesome.
There's no other place where you can see like I don't know 10 like I don't know. We went to see David Blaine, on acid. Like it was just like I mean it's a wild place. It's a different kind of place.
No, I mean, look, I haven't been there, but I can assure you that is a place like no other. I mean they've got like whole ass like little versions of other cities and shit in there. Like that is not normal.
Yeah.
Like it's man. We got a lot of weird shit in the U.S., dude. Like there's a lot of silly shit. It's awesome, man. Like there's nowhere else you can just be like living, having a good time. Like I don't know, man. This is
it's a bizarro universe though, Vegas. Like, it could, just all the. It's in the middle of the desert, just like
it is weird, huh?
Gangster built space that was just kind of in the middle of the desert. It's a kitschy kind of spot that you just see all the lunatics of the world.
For sure.
Just kind of combined there. Yeah, and it's a different kind of experience, but yeah, I recommend it, and definitely go to the Punk Rock Museum.
You know that you were saying it was like gangster built, man, and I mean that's very clearly true. You ever think there's going to be a time where like people don't recognize it as that, and it's going to be people go, "Oh yeah, man, back in like 100 years ago, this place was like built by gangsters," and people are like, "Nah, man, that's just the old wives' tale, bro." Like, because like the
I don't think
from that.
I don't know. I think we might already be at that time. I don't.
I was okay. That's kind of what
it's
I was.
Just most of it is Disneyland now, So now it's like families everywhere.
Yeah,
and you could like even if you went with your kids, there's so much for kids to do, but there's also the seediest side of America right next to it, kissing it. And I think that's such an American thing at the same time. It's like
for sure
a super international, super multicultural place, kind of based on scumbaggery.
Let's go. Let's go.
You kind of can't get more American than that.
No, you really can't, dude. That makes me more excited to go, man.
It's just like, dude. It's like built on the dream of success, right? Built on hitting it big, and it's like every culture, every amazing food, every type of person, the wealthiest and the most posh, and the poorest, and
then you got meth addicts like about 14 feet to your left, like just skitzed out, gacked out,
straight up,
doing weird shit. Fucking dude, I have enough friends that have been there where I've heard just the wildest shit. I'm like, that really happened down the street, and they're like, yeah. It's just wild, man.
Yeah,
Yeah,
man.
dude, that's awesome, man. Well, I know you probably have a lot to do, man, and I appreciate your time. And it was so freaking rad talking to you, bro.
Yeah, you too,
Um,
man.
I'm a
Thanks for
genuine
some
fan of your
unique
music.
unique questions.
Yeah, I just
You
like
went
to
down some.
kick it and chill, bro. This is just a get to know the artist type of thing, man. There's no agenda, nothing like that, man. But I appreciate you. Is there any bands or any artists or anything you want to shout out before we go? Anybody you want to put out there for people to hear?
Oh, sure, man. I'm gonna shout out the Miles Bullen, who's a young cat that I've been working with on my label for years now. But Miles will be opening some of these duo shows that we're doing on the East Coast, me and Sam, and
Okay.
our homie Upgrade Hip Hop, who I actually met through Josh Weird Science from Coheed and Cambria. The
Oh,
drummer of
nice.
Coheed and Cambria
Huh.
is a rapper. A lot of people don't know that,
I did not know
and
that.
introduced me to this other young MC who's now based in Vegas named Upgrade. So shout out to those
Okay.
two heads. They're going to be joining us, and big shouts to Get Dead, of course, and our
Hell yeah.
friends Zeta, who from Venezuela, who have been backing
Nice.
us on a lot of these shows. They're an awesome band to check out. So yeah.
Hell yeah, dude.